This has Vikings fans on high alert for good and bad reasons, as Kevin O'Connell's massive injury updates to start week 7 have us equally excited and nervous for the upcoming clash with the Eagles. And K.O.C drops a second injury bombshell on Paul Allen's broadcast that you won't want to miss. We're going to break down all that in this episode of Vikings Digest. But first, if you're part of the 86% of viewers who are not yet subscribed yet, you want to stay up to date on all things Vikings, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the updates when they drop. And with that, let's hop straight into it, which is the massive injury updates. So Kevin O'Connell took the podium yesterday and talked about some big injury updates with key players returning to practice, with linebacker Blake Cashman's 21-day IR return window today now open, which was yesterday. And per Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings also have J.J. McCarthy, Michael Juergens, Donovan Jackson, and Brian O'Neill back on the practice field this week in various capacities in a bonus practice today. So this is a huge update for Minnesota, as the cavalry seems to finally be coming. And when you look at the offensive line or the offensive depth chart for Minnesota, they absolutely have needed this cavalry incoming. Donovan Jackson returning to practice is huge. Brian O'Neill returning to practice is huge. And J.J. McCarthy, of course, is a big one. And Carson Wentz, they're nursing that non-throwing shoulder injury. And there was more by Kevin O'Connell that we're going to jump into later on in this video, but sticking with the offensive line side of things first, having these guys back is huge, because we saw how they struggled a little bit against the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers when they were facing a lot of injuries. Obviously, Ryan Kelly is not going to be back for a while, so you do have to have them fill in there with Blake Brandel and Michael Juergens, which Blake Brandel did fine. But again, you don't want to have to rely too much on the rookie Joe Huber, who has had a tough time finding his footing a little bit, taking a few bad penalties here and there, allowing some pass rushes. But Donovan Jackson, this was somebody that they expected to be back coming out of the bye, and now it seems like he probably will be, or at least by week 8 it seems like. Brian O'Neill is a big one coming back. That's a big veteran piece on there. And if J.J. McCarthy is under center, you want to have this offensive line as healthy as possible. As far as J.J. McCarthy is concerned, you don't start, even if he's ready to go, you don't start him unless that offensive line is ready to go, because we saw what he was like for the first 2 games of the season without a big offensive line. And now you have to kind of find your footing from there and trust in your veteran quarterback if Carson is ready to go. But more on that later on. But looking at how Blake Cashman coming back is a huge addition for the Minnesota Vikings, is because the Vikings defense ranks a high number of categories. But heading into week 7, they ranked 25th in opposing rush per attempt. According to Summer Sports, compare this to last season when Cashman was on the field for the majority of the team's games, and the Vikings ranked 3rd in the NFL in EPA per opposing rush attempt. So this is obviously a huge one for Minnesota, because Blake Cashman is a massive piece on defense. He's a guy that can get you so much opportunities going, and this is somebody that the Vikings needed to stop the run. We've been abysmal at stopping the run, it seems like, for this whole entire season. Bijan Robinson absolutely torched us. Kenneth Gainwell torched us. Quinshon Judkins torched us. And guess who we're going up against this week? Saquon Barkley. So you want to make sure that this run defense is as stellar as it can be. If Blake Cashman's ready to go, amazing. This is the perfect game to have him back, especially when we probably won't have Andrew Van Ginkel, who K.O.C said he's feeling good, but he's still working through some things. So you want to make sure that going up against this Philly team with a running back like Saquon Barkley, this is lining up to be, like I was saying to somebody yesterday, a very big trap game for both teams potentially. The Eagles, they're in a tailspin right now, but what is usually the team that most teams get it together against and start either a team-changing rally like we saw with the Detroit Lions, or just get their first win of the season, or just have a bounce-back much-needed win, or have a rookie quarterback making their first start and has a chip on their shoulder, or a backup, or things like that? Which team is it usually that those teams get a win against? Us, the Minnesota Vikings. We are primed to have a game like this where the Eagles are going to look like they're absolutely terrible, and people are going to say the Vikings are sneaky favorites in this game and things like that, and then the Eagles are just going to come out and dog walk us. That's usually what we're used to, and it could line up to be exactly like that if we don't have Blake Cashman, if we don't have Brian O'Neill, if we don't have Donovan Jackson. And depending on who the quarterback is, that is going to be a huge part of that. I still think you roll a Carson Wentz in this scenario, especially because JJ isn't already 100%. So that is a huge thing where you want to make sure that your quarterback is 100%. But having Blake Cashman there, big, because you need to contain Saquon Barkley. But speaking of J.J. McCarthy, K.O.C did have an update on J.J. McCarthy where he was saying that I don't necessarily want to put a percentage on where I think he's at health-wise. I think this week will be massive for our whole team, but getting just to see J.J. back out there, getting reps and building and working through the process of that foundation back up, but not ready to say yet where exactly he'll be at and towards the end of the week. Want to see how this week plays out first. And when talking about the week 7 prep, K.O.C kept it simple, saying, I think we've got a game to prepare and try and win a game on Sunday. We really want to get our team ready to go. And in the process of doing that, JJ has his plan of attack that we want to try and make sure that we maximize every single day and prepare all of our guys to be ready to go and make the best decision for our team. And then also individually for each one of those guys as we get closer to it. And K.O.C talked about how this week is going to be about every single guy just doing their job, doing the little things right, limiting pre and post snap penalties, particularly pre-snap penalties, false starts, offsides, things like that, undisciplined things. It's in also blocking the backs on kick returns and holdings. Seems like we have those almost every single kick return. Maybe there's probably 3 or a handful in there that you can say that we haven't gotten a penalty on, but it's been very undisciplined Vikings football for the first couple games this season, and it absolutely needs to be shored up because it's costing us a lot of drives. It's costing us a lot of field position. It's costing us some games in some senses, where that Pittsburgh game, that killed that potential game-winning drive. We executed it perfectly against Cleveland, so we were able to flip the script that way, but there was still a lot of self-inflicted wounds on Minnesota in that Cleveland game. A lot of penalties, a lot of fumbles, a lot of mistakes that you just can't have happen. So Kevin O'Connell wants to correct those things, make sure that everyone's doing their job. And as far as J.J. McCarthy and Carson Wentz are concerned, it's just making sure that, hey, these guys are doing everything that they can individually to be ready to go on Sunday. He did say that Carson Wentz having that non-throwing shoulder injury is a bit of a benefit because you can kind of push him a little bit further depending on where he's at. And he'll be able to push himself further as well because it's not on a throwing shoulder. So he'll just be able to rip that thing and just worry about not taking too many hits on his front shoulder. But Kevin O'Connell did drop a bombshell as well today on Paul Allen's radio show, saying that neither JJ McCarthy nor Carson Wentz are 100%. That is not good. And Sunday's quarterback won't be a secret, and McCarthy could return this week if practice goes very well. This is not what you want to hear, folks. This is a week where we have Blake Cashman potentially coming back. We might have to go to Max Brosmer at quarterback if none of these quarterbacks are ready to go 100%. I'm saying that kind of half seriously in this sense because I think Carson Wentz, he's tough as nails. He's going to fight tooth and nail throughout whatever he is going through on that shoulder to play on Sunday if JJ McCarthy is not ready to go, especially when it's against the Philadelphia Eagles. That is the biggest thing I think that we got to look at here is, yes, Kevin O'Connell clearly wants J.J. McCarthy back. Vikings fans, we want J.J. McCarthy back as well, just because he's the number 10 overall pick and we invested so much in him and we are just looking forward to seeing what he can do. Problem is, the team around him hasn't been fully healthy to give him those opportunities. And yes, this is a thing that you're going to have to deal with all the time as a quarterback. Injuries happen, offensive line injuries happen. You have to adjust with it. Carson Wentz has been performing better with that same shaky offensive line, but he's a veteran quarterback, knows how to go through those reads and progressions. Like Kevin O'Connell was saying, that JJ, with watching Carson over these past couple of games, he's now probably learned that, hey, if you're going through your read progressions, sometimes you can't always look right to the number 1 or number 2 right away if it's Jefferson and Addison. Sometimes you got to look TJ's way right away because they might not even be looking at him at all. Or look to Jordan Mason, or look to a Jalen Nailor, or things like that, or an Adam Thielen, because hello, he's still on the team. So you have options here where it's not always about going to looking at Jefferson first and Addison second. There's things that you can do, and Carson has been doing those things where TJ Hawkinson's been getting more involved. Jalen Nailor's been getting more involved. Adam Thielen, Xavier Scott as well. So it's not just the top guys. Yes, JJ and Addison, they've been eating for sure. But it's not just about making sure that those guys are your first look on every single passing play, especially when you're going up against great defenses and really good secondaries like they went up against the Pittsburgh Steelers and like they went up against with the Cleveland Browns, and they had success throwing the ball against them, whereas JJ really struggled against a very decimated Bears secondary when we played them week 1 and a Falcons secondary that isn't necessarily the greatest outside of Jesse Bates. So now you have Carson Wentz in a revenge game against his former team. You plug him in and you let J.J. McCarthy sit one more week just so that they can get 100%. Because like we've seen with quarterbacks talking on shows before, Cody Kessler was talking on the Gridiron podcast many times before how in regards to Shedeur Sanders, that if you're going to throw him in, you make sure that it's not middle of the week kind of decision. And Kevin O'Connell also talked about that with JJ McCarthy's recovery early on, about 2 weeks ago, where it's not going to be a thing where if JJ is ready to go on Thursday or he's ready to go on Saturday, we're going to plug him in on Sunday. It's not going to be like that. You want to have a full week of game planning, especially with a young quarterback. With Carson Wentz, you can kind of afford to kind of throw him in there a bit later in the week if he's ready to go on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. But with JJ McCarthy and a rookie quarterback, you need to have that full week of game planning around that quarterback because you can tailor the game specifically to him and his strengths. His strengths are not necessarily the same as Carson Wentz's. Carson Wentz's are not necessarily the same as JJ McCarthy's. So you have two different ways that you can game plan a game against a really good Eagles defense, a really good Eagles team that is going to throw a lot at a rookie quarterback because they have Vic Fangio calling the plays defensively. So JJ McCarthy is going to have a lot thrown at him if he's getting in that start. But if these quarterbacks, neither of them are 100% ready to go, but Carson Wentz is able to fight through it, you plug Carson Wentz in there so he can absolutely go off in a revenge game against his former team, go yard for about 280, 3 tutties, and have Justin Jefferson just gritty in the end zone against the Philadelphia Eagles, which would be an absolute beautiful revenge sight to see, because who doesn't hate the Eagles if you're a Vikings fan? We all do, and we all want to see the Vikings end up victorious on Sunday, just destroying the Philadelphia Eagles. But let us know your guys' thoughts on all this down below. What did you think about what Kevin O'Connell was saying on the Week 7 game prep, and what did you think about his appearance on Paul Allen's show, talking about how neither quarterback is ready to go, and how worried are you about that heading into a huge game against the Philadelphia Eagles? Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below, but that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.